The movie Unsung Hero is in theaters April 26th. The story of the Smallbone family coming from Australia to America to start a new adventure. My guest is Dave Smallbone.
What else with Corey, man? This guy can podcast like nobody can. What else with Corey, man? You will look deep inside of yourself and feel something you've never felt when he asked what else with Corey, man.
I first met Dave Smallbone when he was taking his daughter, Rebecca, around to radio stations. I knew of Rebecca, but I didn't know of her music. I took a chunk of time off from Christian music, and I missed the Rebecca St. James boat. So that was the first time meeting her and meeting her amazing father, who I dare call a Renaissance man. Dave Smallbone, welcome to the podcast.
Why is it taking you so long to show me respect and honor, Corey, man? Because I'm 13, 20 years your senior. I expect you, next time we break bread or something, I need more respect and honor, bro, because that's what you're supposed to do to your elders. Why is it taking you so long to learn that?
I think it's taken me a decade to try to figure out how I'm going to get a word in edgewise in the next 30 minutes.
Hey, you are, if you're not the best talker in the industry, you're one of the best. But I need to tell you again, Corey, I love your faithfulness in sharing the most wonderful message known to man over the airwaves. Godspeed to you and your family and everyone at the station.
Dave, does it begin in Australia? Is that home base? Is that your place of origin?
Yeah, I was born 73 years ago in Brisbane. Had wonderful parents. My mum passed away last year, and I had the wonderful privilege of going back to say goodbye, and that was a beautiful moment. My dad passed away unexpectedly 29 years ago, and that was hard for me. And so that's because at the time I had no money. I had immigration problems here in America. I couldn't get back. And so I purposed to go back to say goodbye to Mum. And in the 30 hours it took to get from Nashville down to Toowoomba, which is west of Brisbane, had a lot of time to think. I realized for the first 21 years I had a wonderful mum. And then 6 months after that, I met Helen, my current wife, or my only wife. I call her my current girlfriend. We just spoke for a year. I rented a caravan behind her house, and then we just got on. We just could talk and talk and talk. And then a year later, we started dating, and 3 years later, we got married. And then I've given her, Corey Mann, very lovingly, 7 children. That's where I beat you, okay?
The score is 7-2. I only have 2.
Why does it seem like you always have more? Whenever you send me the pictures, you're the one on the left. It always seems like you've got more children than just 2.
Did you grow up in the church, or was that something that you found later in life?
I grew up in the church, yeah. I've been given this balanced upbringing, very loving mum, good father. Dad was a bank manager. You know, we probably went to 7 or 8 different schools growing up, so I was always meeting new communities. And Dad he led the OKs, which was a boys group, and I was involved in that. It wasn't until, it's interesting with Jesus Revolution just out, it wasn't until that revival that I got really serious. I remember going to a Bible study 50 years ago, maybe 51 years ago, and I made a commitment at that Bible study at the same time the Calvary Chapel revival was going on over here. Helen and I had been talking a lot, but she'd come to me maybe 6 months prior to that and said, David, this could be a good relationship, but you're not serious enough about Jesus. And I thought, okay, well, I've lost her. She then started dating the youth leader at the church, and I thought, well, I'll have to keep looking somewhere else. I made a commitment to follow Jesus, and the next day she dropped the youth leader, and we've been together ever since. So I've had these 2 wonderful women in my life. The trip down to Australia to say goodbye to Mum for her funeral, that allowed me a lot of time to think. And next time you see me, Corey Mann, if I'm not a grateful old bloke, I'm going on about something about the industry or whatever, remember, old bloke, You told me you're really grateful. Evidence that. That's a fair request, isn't it?
It's very fair. LL Cool J says, ego is not your amigo, and humility is your superpower.
Beautiful. Hey, I'll say something to the listeners. One of the things that happened before this interview, or whatever you call it, Corey Mann, young bloke, he said, let's pray. And when he prayed, that was emotional for me. I had to get up my handkerchief and wipe moisture from my eyes. But I appreciate Corey being committed to what's important and just being on the airways every day, sharing the hope in Jesus, even on those days he's not feeling 100%. It's interesting in the music business. I manage a band called For King Country, and we're on the road a lot. And so we're on the road for maybe 6-7 weeks, and then we're off for 2 or 3 months, and then we were on the road 6-7 weeks. But we don't have to work every night. Someone like Corey, he has to work 5 days a week. I imagine sometimes more than that. The other thing I love about Corey Mann, when we're local, he always comes to one of our concerts. And he came to one of our concerts at the beginning of COVID. And it was one of the first
drive-ins.
Yeah, that was the drive-in where we learned how not to do it. Not many people know, but because of that experience, we went out and did drive-ins where we set up our own drive-in theater. We took out a big LED wall. Polestar, which is the industry reporting magazine, came to us February 2021, the beginning of the following year, and said, hey, we want to do an interview with you guys because we've just done our numbers. You are the biggest grossing tour in America for the fall of 2020 and the second biggest grossing tour in the world. There was a band in New Zealand who'd gone out and done shows, and New Zealand was on lockdown, so they wouldn't let anybody in, nobody out, but life was normal. There was no COVID there. It ended up being a pretty astonishing follow-up from and you've always encouraged the old bloke and my boys, Corey, by coming out to the shows. You've been a good and faithful friend.
First time I met the boys was at a baseball game, and they showed up for my birthday. And then they came to town, and they were opening up. It was just the two of them and Mark, their former guitarist. And their dressing room was a storage closet, a literal storage closet. And we folded our bodies in there and did a devotional together. Lo and behold, times have changed, haven't they?
There's something about Christian community, Corey. It doesn't get any better. When I got really serious, I had a number of recommitments to Jesus, but what gave me the passion? And you've been given a passion too, Corey, which I love about you, but my passion was losing everything 33 years ago, coming to town, can't get arrested by the industry, but the church loved on me.
You have been in the music industry in some sort for so many years. When does music get its hooks into you, Dave, or when do you realize that there is a powerful message behind this and you want to get into that stream?
At 16, I realized it. I was singing in a buddy of mine had gone to a water park in Brisbane, and we were driving home, and the youth leader of the church was driving us, and he said, we were just singing along to songs, and he said, can you come and sing at our Sunday school? We put a band together, and that was 57 years ago, and I've been around it ever since. I started I started a band. You won't believe the name of this band. It was called the Lost Wanderers. That was my first band. My dad had a wicked sense of humor. He came up with that name. And I kind of managed the band, and we were a folk group, a la Peter, Paul and Mary. I was the double bass player. And I did that for about 5 years until I was 21, and then I moved to Sydney. But that was my introduction. But I think I realized the power of music. And Helen makes a good comment. She says, the great thing about music, it bypasses the head and goes straight to the heart. And my passion for Christian music it's got stronger over the years. I've had a little bit of money, not a lot, and I've had no money. And when we first came to town 31 years ago, came to Nashville, we lived in poverty, and it was the church that loved on us. And so I'm a lover of the church. I'm sometimes cynical of the processes of the industry. I love the people in it. But my mantra is, don't look for the business answer. look for the Jesus answer. And the thing that you'll understand, Corey, because you're very alert and you're watching everything, the Jesus way is a wonderful way of looking at artist development, because the Jesus way is long term. The commercial way, when the corporations want quarterly profit, it's about, well, this has got to happen now. You got to play this song, and you get it every day because you decide what the music you're going to play on your radio station. My encouragement to anybody, including my sons and our team, is let's look for the Jesus answer. And we've had a wonderful adventure, and I'm so honored that I've been allowed to. And I still have my tough days when I threaten to my beloved, "Oh, baby, it's so hard. My kids aren't listening to me." And then the best line, she came up to me last year when I was saying, "Okay, I'm 72. It's time to retire." It's a year ago. She said, "David, I found this data," and I haven't been able to go back to her since with complaining. She said, "The most productive years," and you've got a way to go, buddy. You're in your third most productive years at the moment. Your most productive years are in your 60s, your second are in your 70s, and your third are in your 50s. So I'm just helping you here, bro. You're now a third of how productive you're going to be in the next decade. Congratulations, Corey, man. What? I'm so comfortable with you, Corey. You make me too comfortable. I'm verbose to a fault.
Because it's taken us 10 years to finally do this together and hit record. That's why.
Why haven't you invited me in the past? Like, I've got hurt feelings now. Lucky I'm into forgiveness. I'm into forgiveness on a good day. Today's a good day, Corey, man.
You had your own record label. You start doing concert promotion. You're into this Christian music thing. You decide to bring one of the biggest names at the time in Christian music to Australia for some shows. Talk about that moment.
I budgeted with that artist to do 25,000. It was a big tour. And that artist was going through, moving across to mainstream and hadn't broken mainstream in Australia. And this is my rationale, be it right or wrong. And the Christians said, well, if someone's not going to sing about Jesus, we don't think we want to go out. And the Australians, the normal Australian guy, just wants to go to the pub. They follow a English tradition. You go to the pub every afternoon at 5, or if you go to a concert, you want to drink a lot. And so just going out to a pseudo-Christian concert, they stayed away. I think I did a pretty good job on marketing, but I think it was God's plan. So I ended up getting 15,000, budgeted for 25,000. I was down 10,000 people at $25 a ticket, so I lost $250,000. That's probably worth today $750,000. That was 33 years ago. And that started the process of us coming to America. I remember going to Helen 31 years ago and saying, "Baby, I think the only way we're going to get ahead is if we go to America." I was shaking in my boots because I thought she'd say no. And she said, "We'll go for 2 years." But I look back on that season. We talk about it in Unsung Hero, the movie. I look back now, even though I shook in my boots for about 4 years, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience, because through it, I saw the loveliness of the church. If anyone's critical of the church to me these days, I'm pretty forward in going back to them and saying, the church put food on the table when I couldn't get work in this town. The church loved on me. The industry that knew me wanted me to go away, but the church loved me. You and I, Corey, and those listening, we're all part of the church, and the church is flawed because it's you and I and the rest of your listeners. But it's the hope of mankind, buddy. I was just at church yesterday and came away inspired to go to a little church down here in Franklin called Conduit. Darren Tyler, who used to be in management, used to manage couplers. He's a senior pastor there. And I just left there inspired to go out more loudly. And I embarrassed my sons, and I'll probably embarrass you. But the good news, Corey, you can edit it out.
Had you been to America before?
Oh, yeah. I'd come over every year. An interesting sidebar about that. I'd come over every year and buy all the marriage books under the sun, because my marriage was good. It wasn't great. And then one of the artists that I toured, this was 10 years, it was before the big tour, put me onto a book called Inside Out by Larry Crabb. And that book had a chapter on unconditional love. So I came back, that visit to America, 38 years, because I'd be here for GMA, as you know. I'll be here for CBA, Christian Booksellers Association. I'd come every year, so I would be here like twice a year. I read that book. I thought, I'm going to start loving my wife unconditionally instead of conditionally, because I'm still a young bloke, 35. I think I had 3-4 kids at the time. And overnight, my marriage went from good to great. And I'm an apologist for that book. If you ever know anybody, Corey, who needs some help in marriage, and I tell you another thing. I know this is a bit off your question, but anyway, hey, we're just getting to know each other. So all the people around me are dying. They're younger than me. There's no one guy was older recently, but probably in the last year I've had 6 or 7 all die. And one of them was the wife of my publisher, Warren Chappell. She had a brain tumor. She was 45, went to the funeral. And for whatever reason last week, Corey, and hopefully this might help some of you out there who, that book might help by Larry Crabb, Inside Out. The other thing is, for whatever reason, in my quiet time, probably wandering around the farm last week, I think I was out building a fire or something, this idea of love like you're dying, live like you're dying. I was a Tim McGraw song maybe 15 years ago, and I thought, what a wonderful principle. So I shared that in devotions this morning. I shared that with some of my family last night. I've got a friend who's doing it a bit tough in marriage at the moment, and I shared it with him. I said, okay, why don't you try this? Love your wife like you're dying and seeing if there's any change. But that's what, Corey, next time you see me, say to the old bloke, are you living like you're dying? Because I think if we were dying, and we've been around friends who've had cancer, we'd probably be louder about the Jesus perspective.
Australia to California, to Tennessee via train, if I know the story right.
Yeah, you do.
Did you have a friend? Did you have some friends here that you could rely on for this big move, or was it just dart on a map and here we go?
Had a friend in San Diego, and we stayed there for the first week, and that's why we got the train over here. And the train went to Memphis. We arrived at Memphis 3 or 4 in the morning. I don't know if you've ever been to Memphis train station, but man, it's kind of the darkest looking train station in the world. I kind of knew people, but I wasn't close to people. And you got to know, in some cases, I owed people money. We'd just lost everything. I sold a house to pay everybody back, but in a couple of cases, money was owing. And those people forgave me, not huge amounts of money, but a little bit of money. I remember one of the guys in White Hart, he loaned me a car. I came over to work for an artist. That was the core of your question is, did you have any connections here? I came over for an artist that I toured very successfully in Australia. And he's the guy who put me on to Inside Out. And he let me go after 2 months. And so I worked for him for 2 months. But that was the fleece to get us here. And I'm very thankful. I've got it down. His manager at the time, he just passed away about a month ago. And that reminded me, I need to get together with my friend and thank him for putting me onto Inside Out, and thank him for having me work for him for 2 months, which was the fleece to get us to America. Because we've had Corey, we've had a wonderful adventure. Like I get emotional sometimes just thinking about it. And that's why I'm so loud about the adventure of living by faith. I've only started really making significant money at 70, 3 years ago. And, as you know, most people retire at 65, but it goes back to that comment that Helen said, your most productive years are in your 60s, your second most productive are in your 70s. So I'm in my most productive time at the moment, but I am celebrating life. I had 7 kids, 5 boys, 2 girls, and I've got 14 grandkids. And Helen and I took 5 grandkids up to Pigeon Forge weekend before last and just had a wonderful time. So I apologize, the sidebar. I know you don't want any more sidebars. I promise this is the last sidebar, Corey, man. The sidebar is that when my 5 sons are married, and when they get married, I wait until that time. And then soon as they've signed on the dotted line and we've been through the ceremony, I then go to them and say, okay, baby, you've married a Smallbone. Just know you need to have 7 children. And some of them, Some of them who question my sense of humor look at me. Whoa, I'm not sure I married for this, but I say it half in jest. You know me pretty well, don't you, Corey, man?
I do.
A lot of truth is said in jest, isn't it? You're the biggest jester in our genre. There's a lot of truth. When you're when you're pulling me down over something jokingly, I'm hearing the truth, Corey, man. Thank you for holding me accountable when I don't want to be held accountable.
When this artist, this friend, says, hey, whatever the reason was, 2 months later, it's not working out or whatever, when do you turn to your daughter and go, all right, now we're in the thick of it and this chapter needs to happen? How did that unfold with Rebecca?
Well, she'd started, this is interesting. I don't know if many people know this story, but we had her at a Christian school in Sydney. I think she was probably 13 at the time. And that Christian school had an outreach rock band. And at 13, she was invited to join that. And so they'd go out and sing at prisons and they'd go out and sing at shopping centers and things like that. It was an outreach from Christian Outreach Center. So I realized then that she had some potential. So it had nothing to do with me. So I went and made a record, and Carmen heard that record, Carmen, the Christian singer, and then invited her to tour Australia because he just wanted friends on the road. So it had started in Australia, but I was going to be coming to town. I was going to be distracted working with other people to keep the wolf from the door. That all went away. So then I got really serious about taking to all the labels in town. I ended up getting a deal with Word Records. And on the day, and Greg Nelson was going to be part of the deal, a big producer. And on the day that deal was supposed to happen, Word pulled out. This is the best part of that story. So we were supposed to get an advance. This 30 years ago. Rebecca was 14. We're supposed to get an advance of $10,000. A songwriter in town from our church had become our benefactor. Every Sunday after church, he'd take us to Chinese. We'd have Chinese out, and we had 7 children at the time, and it was not inexpensive. But he gave us a car at one stage, and then he came to me and said, "Smallbone, I want to give you the $10,000 that we weren't going to get from the record label." And I was feeling pretty low. I was feeling very much like a failure. I said, "Well, my self-worth is at an all-time low. I have to give you something back." So I said, "Well, please accept half of Rebecca's publishing." It didn't mean anything because she didn't have a record deal. He said, "Okay, I'll take it." Over the next 10 years, he was a missionary in Ukraine, believe it or not. That's in the news all the time now. He was able to make more than 10-fold, more than 20-fold on that 20,000. And it just, Corey, that was just a reminder of the wonder of God's economy. Here's this guy who sees these struggling Australians finding it difficult to pay the rent, finding it difficult to put food. Most weeks we didn't know how we're going to put food on the table next week, but we always had food. And so we lived in the miraculous week to week. And this guy is still a friend. He's just been over to Ukraine and did a documentary over there. And I'm getting together with him this week. We become brothers over that whole experience. We become brothers from other mothers. Now I help him. He helped me then, and now I help him in different things. It's beautiful. I can't stress this loudly enough. If you're looking for a title for this little thing, whatever we're doing, and you might have done it for somebody else, you can't do it then, but I'd say God's economy. I have experienced God's economy. So have you, Corey, because I don't know if you're told, but you're loved by our people in our industry. When you come into a room, the room lights up because we all feel your presence is encouraging. That God's economy idea, if I can leave people with anything out of this little talk, it's that God's economy idea, because I saw God take care of me and my family when I was at my wit's end. I'm too loud an apologist now, Corey. I need to be. Can you pull me back a little bit so I can become normal again?
Rebecca goes on tour, and it's all Smallbone hands on deck, right?
Correct.
Everybody was involved. Who did what back then?
Rebecca did the singing. Daniel did the lighting. Ben was videoing everything, and now he's a filmmaker. But he would also help with the lighting. He got off the road. He didn't like the road. Joel was Rebecca's backup singer. Luke helped with the lighting as well, and setting it up, setting the stage up. And Joel did a lot of that, helped the production as well. That's why for King Country Stages, it's pretty good looking, because Joel did his apprenticeship with Rebecca. And then Josh, the youngest, he was 6 or 7 or 8 at the time. We'd put him on a stool and he'd be the follow spot operator. And my wife was the ultimate counselor. She just kept it all together. And she was Rebecca's friend. It's hard for a female. You know this. It's hard for a female in Christian music because it's so commercially driven. And once you end up having some success, well, a lot of decisions are made on a commercial basis. And that messes with females more so than it messes with males. And if there's any females listening, make sure when you're doing this thing, make sure you have good counsel, because my wife was terrific. I was Rebecca's protector, and I'm an artist development guy, so I can do that pretty easily. But Helen was her protector.
Rebecca starts to transition to other things in life. Here comes the two brothers. I don't know that I've ever heard the origin story of two brothers coming together to form this dynamic duo. What's the story there?
Joel wanted to do a thing probably about 20 years ago. He would have been 17, 18 at the time. Backstreet Boys are big. He wanted to do a solo Backstreet Boy thing. But you already got Backstreet. So we do some demos. Sounds like Backstreet. But, people want fresh. They want more, something different. And so I take the demos around to everybody. No one's interested. So I go to him and say, hey, your brother has a very good voice. Why don't you consider doing something with him? I'm going to Joel, talking about Luke. He says, I'm not sure about that, but I'll give it a shot. He definitely wasn't that excited about the idea. And so that for the next 5 years, they just wrote songs, demoed, and they would have given up because they were doing something differently. We were looking, as Christians, we're going to sign with a pop label, and we wanted to go to the wider audience. Not many people were interested. But then, believe it or not, a producer in town, Kerry Underwood's producer, and the guy who founded Rascal Flatts, a guy called Mark Bright, he was CEO for Word Records for about a year and a half. He heard the boys, loved the demos, and basically signed them on the spot. So it took somebody out of Christian music, a country music expert, produced a lot, had a publishing company, produced a lot of country people. He saw something in the boys that no one else could see. And I tell him all the time, so grateful. Thank you for believing. There was a publisher, Judy Stakey, over at Warner Chappell. She really believed in the boys. There was a producer in town called Sean Shankel who believed in the boys, and then Mark Bright. It was those three that were very instrumental, and it's been a wonderful ride. To your audience who know for King Country, support them. Thank you. We've just loved traveling across America, doing things with Corey and his concerts that he does up there with you guys, and it's what a lovely experience for our family, and we're grateful people. I hope that comes across from my sons as well, because it's true. They are grateful.
Watching them now, the biggest duo in Christian music, I love going to the show and becoming a fan all over again. I feel like you as their manager and them had that vision early on. You knew where you wanted to go, but you also had the wisdom because of what you've been through in your life and them, being raised in the industry. You knew that it was going to take some time. Did you have that vision of where you're at now back then?
I've always been an artist development guy. I managed rock and roll bands in Australia. I managed for a while there a group called Family, who are the biggest Christian group in Australia. That probably goes back 50 years. So you know what it is, Corey? It's I'm a bit of a crusty old bloke. I'm not an easy sell, but I try and put everything that we do through the Jesus filter. And I think the Jesus filter is the ultimate development filter. You want to share the hope in Jesus creatively and as well as you can. So we've always had that goal. What we do, we spend a lot of money on production. We use, as you know, we use a lot of tricks in the trade. We've got stages, going up in the middle of the auditorium, not inexpensive, but we use it all to share this wonderful message. And you know what I think one of the strengths are? I own a third for King Country. So I'm this crusty old bloke who's seen it all. My major thing is, God, boys, stay true to Jesus. What is the Jesus answer to this? Then you've got Joel, who understands the stage, very likable person, very good presenter. He finishes the songs. Luke starts the songs. Luke is very spiritually sensitive. You put the two of them together, it's 1 + 1 = 3. And what an honor for me, Corey, that the old bloke has been allowed to be part of all this, because most people, what happens here in town, as soon as you hit 55, the corporations put you out to pasture. And you know some of those people. It ain't pretty. And blow me down. And those corporations haven't realized what my wife told me. You're most productive in your 60s. And what they get worried about, you got to pay people too much. That's why you're out the door so often at 55. But I've been allowed to be around. And my main thing, I did it, as I told you before, I did a devotion at our movie marketing meeting just an hour ago. It's trying to keep Jesus the main thing. And I think, Corey, I've told you this before, I'll tell you it again. I want to encourage you, with all those radio promoters calling up, and I know quite a few of them who call you, I want to encourage you to tell stories to them about lives changed on your radio station. Because here in town, in Nashville, we're so worried about the bottom line, we forget what's most important. But if you, just like you're going to be asking me some questions next time, am I living like I'm dying? I'm going to be asking you, Corey Mann, have you been witnessing to the record label promotions people who've called you? Are you hearing me, Corey Mann?
Loud and clear.
He knows I'm going to do it, folks.
Yes.
He knows I'm going to do it.
Favorite King and Country song as their dad? Which one do you love the most?
You make me cry in this one, Unsung Hero, because I've been blessed by two things. I've been blessed by Jesus and health. And the fact that the powers that be want to do a movie about this extraordinary lady. I'm sitting where I first heard that song. I first heard that song probably 18 months ago. Here in this little studio room, Helen does all of, whatever you call this, Zoom interviews here in this room. But she and I both cried. And here you've got this remarkable lady who made a decision to follow Jesus at 16 and has been faithful, kept me on track most of the time, loves Jesus, strong disciplinarian with the kids, put out the book, Behind the Lights, it's called. If you want a good story about encouragement, about family, and seeing good move, read that book. That's the big one, man. And we're going to be, I think we're sending it to you soon. I think for some stations it's going to be a little, it's not Jesus-centric enough. But it is, because she's been a wonderful wife, wonderful mother, wonderful contributor to the world, because she committed to follow Jesus at 15. And I'm blessed to Billy, man. My friends haven't had it as easy in marriage as I've got it. I don't deserve it. For the first time, I'm going to tell you, Corey, man, I am grateful. Grateful, grateful, grateful. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus.
What did you learn when you were making Priceless that you brought on to Unsung Hero? You learned a valuable lesson about making that movie project. Now you're making this new one. What did you learn from that when you're like, okay, this next one, we're going to do it like this?
I think getting the team right, making sure there's no waste. There's a lot of waste in Christian movies, because what happens is the money that goes into marketing in Christian music is just I think our movie was, we made Priceless for $1.25 million. I think we had $2.25 million. I tell you an interesting thing. I don't know if many people know this, but guess who put most of the marketing into Priceless? It was the My Pillow guy. Did you know that?
No.
Oh, yeah. What we've got in Unsung Hero, it's a counter the culture movie. Priceless was really counter the culture, because at that time, 6-7 years ago, the culture wasn't talking about trafficking. It is now, and it's happening on the border, so sadly. So the crazy thing about Priceless, it's more successful at the moment than it ever has been. But this idea of going to the encouragement and particularly encouraging mothers. And that's one of the things that came out. Mothers are the unsung heroes. And I think in marketing this movie, we're going to be very priceless. One of the ideas I've got, or we talked about this morning, I should say we got, is going out to women's groups all across America, showing them either the movie or parts of the movie early to encourage them, because they stay home, look after the kids, and, you know, in a lot of cases their friends are working. In a lot of cases the culture is saying, well, people who work are very valuable to the market. They're more valuable than the homemakers, the people, you know, the mums doing all the hard work with the kids. So I think our major takeaway is, this is what my takeaway is, Corey. This is a movie of hope. And a lot of people are feeling hopeless at the moment. Suicides are through the roof. It's just, you know, there's a lot of fentanyl coming over the border. And even when people don't want to die, they're dying. We've got to get this message out more loudly than ever in history. And I would say we're more focused about this hope for the hopeless, that ideal, where I think in trafficking, the whole priceless thing was, what's the real focus here? And part of it, it did encourage a woman's self-worth. But on this one, I think encouraging women to live the life and probably do what Helen did and make a decision to follow Jesus. That's what we're pretty focused about.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. Hey, do me a favor, wherever you listen to this podcast, please give me a rating and a review. Give me some feedback. I'd love to hear from you. If you want to email the podcast directly, it's whatelsewithcoreyman@gmail.com. New episodes on Mondays. Thanks for listening.
What Else with Corey Mann, with your host, Corey Mann. Original music and theme song by Chris Cron. Share this episode with a friend, and thanks for listening.